One might wonder whether there are enough possible ways of distributing planets across the zodiac in order to use the horoscopes for transcribing dates. Possible horoscopes that could all be successfully assigned to dates, that is, with the discrepancy threshold of a day or two? A year has 365¼ days, which makes a millennium equal some 365,000 days. The historical period covered by documented history equals 5 to 6,000 years, according to the consensual chronology. The period in question equaled to circa 2 million days. Can the quantity of horoscopes available to us cover an interval this great? Could there be so few possible planetary combinations to make individual horoscopes recur every 100 to 200 years? Had this been the case, the dates transcribed with the aid of horoscopes would be useless for the purpose of independent chronological study, since it would then be easy to find a date to fit the horoscope in any given century. Actually, this is the very error, among many others, made in the attempts to prove Scaligerian chronology by rough astronomical dating of Sumerian tablets or Egyptian zodiacs in the interpretation that the Egyptologists suggest. Fortunately, the situation is far from being as dire as one may have initially thought. The number of possible combinations for a horoscope is vast. It surpasses 3.5 million. This is quite sufficient for the purposes of independent dating. Bearing in mind that each of the 7 planets can be in any of the 12 zodiacal constellations at any one time, we have 12 options for every planet. However, the inner planets, Venus and Mercury, cannot lie too far away from the Sun. The maximal distance between the Sun and Venus is 48 arc degrees, and Mercury is never further away from the Sun than 28 degrees. If the position of the Sun upon the zodiac is fixed, Venus can be at the distance of 2 zodiacal signs from the Sun maximum, whereas for Mercury this distance is never greater than a single sign. Bear in mind that a single zodiacal sign occupies 30 arc degrees on the ecliptic in general. Thus, we get 5 possible zodiacal signs for Venus, the same as in case with the Sun, and 2 neighboring signs at either side, and 3 possible signs for Mercury. Other planets can occupy varying positions on the ecliptic. The final result that we get is as follows: 3,732,480 possible horoscopes. If we aren't after particular precision and consider one zodiac to be valid for one day on the average, we shall have to divide the resulting number by the number of days in a year, which will give us the approximate horoscope recurrent interval. Any calculator shall tell us that it equals some 10,000 years. In other words, if the distribution of horoscope combinations in time were completely chaotic, each horoscope would recur once in circa 10,000 years. However, the recurrences are far from completely chaotic. Thus, having once surfaced, a given horoscope recurs once or twice over the next 1,500 to 2,000 years, and disappears again for tens of millennia. Such recurrence of horoscope results from the existence of pseudo-periods inherent in the planetary configuration of the solar system. These are false periods between the recurrences of the already perturbed solar system configurations. Each recurrence of the configuration is distorted to a greater extent than its predecessor. Such pseudo-periods aren't likely to make more than 2 or 3 cycles. One of such pseudo-periods, 854 years in length, was discovered by Morozov. The effect of these pseudo-periods is as follows. Many of the horoscopes, seeing as how they manifested in the last 2 to 3 millennia, may recur 2 or 3 times over the historical period. From the viewpoint of astronomical dating, this leads to rather undesirable, yet common scenario where we are confronted with several solutions for the same horoscope manifest throughout the entire historical period. However, there are usually few such solutions, 2 or 3, sometimes 1, or 4, on the contrary. Thus, if we are to have any kind of non-trivial astronomical information at our disposal to characterize the desired date apart from the horoscope, we shall be left with just one complete solution. This is the case with every Egyptian zodiac. On the other hand, the above-mentioned calculations imply that random, or fictional horoscopes have no solutions on the historical interval of 2 to 3 millennia as a rule, which is a great deal less than the horoscope recurrence period. Thus, the astral calendar of the Egyptian zodiacs is indeed capable of telling us the precise dates of the ancient Egyptian history. Apparently, the very idea of using the astral calendar in order to transcribe the sepulchral dates would be based on its exceptional longevity. Indeed, this calendar, unlike every other system of timekeeping known to us, allows the transcription of dates without the need for referring to any contemporary events. It doesn't depend on the beginning of an emperor's reign, or the beginning of some other era or calendar cycle. It doesn't even depend on the timekeeping system and the way of writing numbers. In other words, there are no dependencies on anything that can be easily forgotten by the descendants. The transcription of dates in such a calendar required neither words nor numbers. Drawn figures would account for everything. The only knowledge one needs, in order to decipher such a dating, is that of zodiacal constellation symbols and planetary figures. One has to admit that this plan of the ancient Egyptians, based on the presumption that people shall remember these astronomical concepts, proved perfectly valid. We have enough knowledge of the ancient astronomy nowadays to decipher the astral datings. In order to calculate the positions of the Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars and Venus as seen from the Earth, Fomenko and Nosovsky have used the Planetap program written in Fortran by the group of French astronomers from the Parisian Bureau des Longitudes. The program is based on the algorithm of calculating the planetary ephemerides that they published in Astronomy and Astrophysics, an astronomical journal, in 1994. The Planetap program allows to calculate coordinates, radius vectors and instant speeds for the 8 primary planets of the Solar System: Earth, Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Venus, Uranus and Neptune. The heliocentric planetary coordinates in the Planetap program are calculated in relation to the ecliptic plane of epoch. Planetap software developers guarantee the precision rate of 2 arc-minutes or more for the heliocentric coordinates of all 8 planets on the time interval starting with 1000 AD. The precision of their program begins to waver for dates preceding 1000 AD, but remains sufficient for our purposes up to the first centuries of the Common Era. Bear in mind that we shall be perfectly satisfied with the discrepancy rate of several degrees for the planetary positions as observed from the Earth. Higher precision will simply be uncalled for, in the dating of the Egyptian zodiacs. The Planetap program was used as a subroutine of HOROS, the computer software developed by the authors of this study specifically for the purpose of dating Egyptian zodiacs or other ancient zodiacs of a similar type. The HOROS program uses the heliocentric planetary coordinates calculated by Planetap in order to estimate the ecliptic coordinates of Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars and Venus as seen from the Earth. The initial reference point chosen for counting longitudes is the spring equinox of the epoch J2000. The positions of the Moon on the zodiac were calculated by another subroutine of the HOROS program which was also written by the specialists from the Parisian Bureau des Longitudes, likewise Planetap. With the aid of such software, which can calculate the past positions of all the ancient planets, Fomenko and Nosovsky have developed a new astronomical program called HOROS, specially designed for the astronomical dating of ancient zodiacs. HOROS requires an approximate disposition of planets in zodiacal constellations on the input, and calculates all possible datings applicable. If the planets are arranged on the zodiacal order in some manner specified in the source, the program marks every date for which the planetary order satisfies to the above-mentioned conditions. Let us give a step-by-step description of the procedure used for the dating of all the Egyptian zodiacs. Its primary difference from all the previously known approaches is the fact that it is based on a new and more exhaustive interpretation of the astronomical content found in the Egyptian zodiacs. Let us emphasize that when we mention the astronomical dating of an Egyptian zodiac, we mean the decipherment of the dates that were transcribed in these zodiacs by the ancient Egyptians, and not the actual time of their creation. The manufacture date of the zodiacs themselves is an altogether different issue. However, one can be certain enough that the date ciphered in a zodiac cannot postdate its manufacture. Zodiacs were obviously used to commemorate past events and not refer to random points in the future. On the other hand, nothing could stop the ancient Egyptian artist from encoding some very old date in the zodiac. Calculating planetary positions for a given date was well within the ability of an average medieval astronomer. Step 1. The previously compiled comprehensive tables of Egyptian astronomical symbols were used in order to bring out every possible option of identifying the planets in a given zodiac's primary horoscope. Typically, several possible interpretation options emerged. For instance, the Sun and the Moon would often be drawn with similar symbols. Sometimes problems arose with identifying other planets. Step 2. All dates were calculated for each interpretation option of the primary horoscope in which the planetary disposition on the celestial sphere corresponded to the zodiac. This would be done with the aid of the Horus program. The planetary order as specified in the zodiac was taken into account. It wouldn't always be defined with absolute precision. For instance, a planetary pair's disposition on a round zodiac would be such that no order of the respective two planets would contradict the zodiac in general. Some part of the zodiac may be destroyed. Therefore, the Horus program has been written in such a way so as to make it recognize all such cases. The time interval of the calculations starts with 500 BC and ends with 1900 AD. The lowest boundary of the interval was specified as 500 BC since, according to the consensual chronology of the ancient Egypt, the earliest zodiacs allowing for decipherment and astronomical dating, classified as the Greco-Babylonian type, were compiled in Egypt in the 1st century BC. Earlier Egyptian zodiacs are completely different, and defy decipherment so far. To be on the safe side, the authors extended the lower bound several centuries into the past. All the dates from the calculation interval, 500 BC to 1900 AD, whose horoscopes coincide with the one contained in the zodiac, would be listed as possible dates for respective decipherment options. The general amount of such dates would fluctuate from 4 to 5 to several dozens for some zodiacs. It is noteworthy that for many zodiacs a complete absence of possible dates was found in the first centuries before and after the beginning of the Common Era, the very period in which, according to Egyptologists, most of them were compiled. This completely confirms Morozov's conclusion that no more or less satisfactory astronomical solutions exist for the Egyptian zodiacs in the epoch desired by the Egyptologists. All solutions proposed by various authors that fall within this period are so far-fetched, one cannot even call them solutions. Step 3. Using an astronomical application, the authors would test each of the possible dates generated in the previous stage for compliance with the following criteria. The authors would verify whether the source data, the main horoscope, and the real, calculated, planetary positions in zodiacal constellations concur with each other without any ambiguity. The necessity for such verification arises from the fact that in the calculation of preliminary dates, the conditions for the intervals of possible planetary dispositions were deliberately made as lax as possible. This was done in order to compensate for discrepancies in constellation boundaries. Planetary visibility would be checked for two observation points, the Egyptian towns of Alexandria and Luxor. In doubtful cases, possible observation points farther to the north were also taken into account. Planets and stars are only visible in the sky if the Sun has set far enough below the local horizon. However, stars and planets of varying brightness may require different degrees of solar immersion in order to be seen. The symbolical description of every secondary horoscope would have to be in perfect correspondence with the celestial sphere of the solstice or equinox points for the year insisted upon by the solution in question. This proves to be a very strict condition which a random solution usually cannot satisfy to. One or two non-trivial secondary horoscopes usually suffice to eliminate all extraneous solutions. Another important factor at this stage is the beginning of the year used in the present zodiac. For instance, if a certain solution yields us a vernal date for the primary horoscope which we intend to test for complying with the secondary horoscope of winter solstice, our actions will depend on the beginning of the year used in the zodiac under study. If a year begins in September, for instance, we'll have to consider the winter solstice of the December that precedes the primary horoscope's vernal date. Should the year begin in January or March, it is the next December that we have to turn our attention to. Egyptian zodiacs appear to imply September as the beginning of the year. However, one needn't exclude the possibility that some zodiac might refer to March or January as to such. Therefore, the authors would initially consider the version with the year beginning in September, and consider other options in case it didn't fit. However, almost every single final solution refers to September as the first month of the year. All three steps of the above-mentioned dating procedure would either invalidate all preliminary solutions the authors would come up with, for Egyptian zodiacs, or leave them with just one solution. Cases with more solutions were extremely rare, and all pertain to uninformative or largely destroyed zodiacs. The resulting solution is the one that Fomenko and Nosovsky call final, or exhaustive for a given zodiac. The important point is that the procedure for deciphering and dating the Egyptian zodiacs permits an unambiguous reconstruction of the dates encoded in the Egyptian zodiacs in most cases.